Science fiction and horror work really well together. Just think about it. Alien, a masterpiece, by far one of my favorite movies. Event Horizon, also really good. And then you have video games like Doom, Dead Space, Prey, and Alien Isolation. But written science fiction horror isn't nearly as prevalent, and definitely not space opera horror. Enter Stacy Cade. Writing under her horror pseudonym S.A. Barnes, she delivers Dead Silence. And no, I do not mean the 2007 movie of the same name featuring a demonic ventriloquist and Silky Stackhouse's brother. Dead Silence is set in the year 2149, and we follow Claire Kovalek and her 5-person repair crew as they service remote communication satellites in the far reaches of the solar system. Now, if that sounds boring, don't worry, we're going to get to the good stuff. Claire is a deeply troubled character. Haunted by a traumatic past as the sole survivor of a plague on a Martian colony, we often get flashbacks. Her emotional turmoil is made worse by the realization that her job will soon be obsolete by autonomous robots. And it's kind of a fear we all have, right? And then you guessed it. As Claire and her crew wrap up their final mission, they receive a distress signal from an area of space where no ship should be. The signal leads them to the Aurora, a massive luxury liner that mysteriously vanished 20 years ago. The decision to board the derelict ship, motivated by a potential for massive salvage rights, sets the stage for the horror to come. Now, Claire and her team, they soon discover something far more sinister than a mechanical failure that occurred aboard the Aurora. Now, guys, this section contains spoilers for the book. I'll include a timestamp you can skip to if you don't want to be spoiled. The first half of Dead Silence delivers exactly what I was looking for. Barnes crafts an unsettling atmosphere with subtle scares that linger in the background, and she builds pretty good tension without relying on cheap thrills. Along the way, the crew discovers video footage from the Aurora's passengers and is genuinely unnerving. Seriously, pretty creepy stuff. However, the novel falters when it abruptly shifts focus around the 200-page mark. And I should mention that this story is a frame narrative. Everything we read is a flashback as Claire retells the story to the security for the story's big bad corporation, because of course we had to have one. Eventually, the 2 points converge as we see Claire back on Earth in what appears to be a high-security mental institution. The Earth sections of the book, they're way more conventional science fiction action thriller and less horror, and it really undermines the tension that Barnes was building up until this point. The corporate villains are cliched and predictable, which is really a shame because it detracts from the novel's initial premise. And it's here that we get a supernatural versus science explanation for the events aboard the Aurora, and it kind of takes me out of it. Claire can actually see ghosts, but vibrations on the Aurora cause all of the passengers and Claire's crew to hallucinate ghosts. So we have real supernatural ghosts, or just supernatural ghosts, and then hallucinated ghosts. I don't necessarily love it, but I don't mind it. So with that being said, Claire's ghost seeing abilities, they feel really unexplored once you find out that this isn't truly a supernatural tale in space. And by the time we make it to the climax, it's a letdown. It doesn't fit with the vibes of the first 50% of the book. Overall, it's just kind of meh. Despite its flaws, Dead Silence is worth reading, especially for those who, like me, are hungry for space opera horror. The early chapters are filled with suspense and chilling discoveries, and I really enjoyed finding out what gruesome discoveries Claire and her team would find next. If you can overlook the novel's shift in tone and enjoy a blend of horror and sci-fi, there's a lot to appreciate here. Before we get to my final thoughts, we really have to address a quote on the back of the book by Lisa Sheeran. She writes, "I've always considered Alien the high mark of science fiction horror. No longer. Dead Silence leaves it in the dust." Lisa, come on. look at me. You know this isn't better than Alien. But I digress. Dead Silence begins as a thrilling deep space horror novel, but ultimately fails to live up to its initial promise. In Barnes, she showcases her talent for creating atmosphere and tension, but then later falters in delivering a consistent narrative. While the novel doesn't fully satisfy the craving for a perfect space horror, it's still a ride worth taking, even if the destination isn't what you hoped for. But for now, I think I'm just going to go back to replaying Dead Space.